I was writing back to a comment this afternoon. As I was leaving the gym to go back home, and I was sitting there in front of the cake selling tent in the parking lot, staring at the guy who was staring at me for staring at him, right? And I thought to myself, and this is based on the comment, I don't remember what it said because I've been interacting with a lot of different people online, of course, not in real life. And suddenly I came to the realization that everything that I've talked about in the last few months can only lead to one conclusion, that the minimum wage is a cruel experiment that's being conducted on poor people to see how deep the rabbit hole goes when it comes to whether or not they're going to allow it to continue to happen, because we know that the minimum wage is a standard of living that is completely below what we expect to get, right? The minimum wage was never designed uh, to make life comfortable. It was almost designed to extinguish life. If you look at the cost of living comparatively to the minimum wage, it doesn't seem to be uh, holding up the proletariat. The minimum wage is a wage that's designed to make you live as uncomfortably as humanly possible. And it has to be an experiment. There's no way that a person with the best interest of mankind would create a minimum wage and then watch millions of people fail and think this is a good system, it's working for me. But if you take the mentality of the people who created this country, who didn't really believe in fair labor, because when you can't find the labor that you want where you live, well, you've got to go get it somewhere else, because nothing is more profitable than free labor. And this country was built on free labor. And the only way you can have free labor is, we know, by having an open air prison system being your country. When you want to pay a certain amount of money for a particular job, and let's just call this not a proletariat level job, but let's say you're an executive at Google and you need someone that costs $100,000 a year. Well, you don't want to pay $100,000 a year. So you do what Google announced that it was going to do: shift high paying jobs across the border or to India. When you want to keep your profit margins sky high, earn record profits every year, you don't create good jobs here. You outsource them to places where you can pay the minimum wage in that country. When you go to a third world country, it has smart people in it too. America has this strange fixation that only America has smart people living in it. The whole world has smart people living in it. But when you're in a third world, you can't command $100, $200, or $300,000 salary. When I worked at this software company a few years back, oh my gosh, maybe like 15 years ago, the owner knew that he could save money by creating the software package with I think it's Serbian programmers, and they didn't speak English. The whole back and forth between the programming of this piece of software and the owner was done through Google Translate or some other translation program at the time. Or he might have been from that country. I just remember that whenever there needed to be software patches for glitchy software, that it had to be sent to them and translated into what they needed to do. So when you have these kinds of shady practices, do you uh, do you understand why things are like this? Because they want to put all the jobs that pay well overseas. They want to have as few as humanly possible jobs that pay good wages in America. And that's why I made the video that I made this morning. Your dream job doesn't exist because it exists in another country. And even there, it's not someone's dream job. They may have gone to university for many years and have the experience to do all of those things. but they're not going to be rewarded because they live in a third world country. They may be living better off than the general population because it doesn't take a whole lot. When I worked at Insight, they loved doing this. They would pay us a certain amount of money here to work in the call center, but throughout the company, they would outsource jobs, the exact same job, to Mexico, and they would pay that person a fraction of what they paid us here, and they were required to do every part of that job. Imagine that, being remote in another country while knowing full well that people over here are making a significantly larger amount for the same work, but because of where you live and labor laws, they don't have to pay you anything. And that's why I think that the minimum wage is an experiment, because they've tried to lower the 99% of jobs to a point in which they're not realistic. These jobs are phony. These jobs were never intended to support human life. In the 80s, a janitor could work a 40-hour work week, own a home, have a car, and still look forward to retirement. Now, the minimum wage has the buying power of nothing. And in my opinion, I have to come back and say this has to be some sort of gross, disgusting experiment done by the evil corporations in order to see how far they can push people, because they're pushing people to not bend anymore for this low quality of life, but to truly break, as homelessness will increase exponentially in the coming years, as things are going to get more difficult and there are going to be even less good jobs. I've been looking for work for years. If this is the best job that I can find in my entire life and it sucks, then that means that there's nothing out there for the vast majority of ordinary workers. Just more crap jobs and more jobs reports that are as phony as a $3 bill. So, with that said, let's get into my monologue. I'm going to start with this. This was the first paragraph generated by the story that I wrote. This entire video is created by me, edited through ChatGPT, but this is my original work, because I don't think that anyone out there on YouTube is going to be as bold with a title like this. All right, so let's get into this. Think about it. Minimum wage was created to protect people like me. Back then, it was for women, kids, and immigrants, those of us seen as less valuable. But now, it's a number corporations throw at us to see if we will break or bend. So, I have my 3 talking points, and they all have very similar references to what I've talked about earlier. But with that said, let's get right into it, because I've spent way too much time in the monologue in the last few videos because I love the sound of my own voice, right? All right, talking point number 1. Minimum wage was created to protect vulnerable groups, women, children, immigrants, from exploitation. If you have to protect people from a system, isn't that system innately evil? If you have to protect someone who's vulnerable from a system, that goes to show that that system doesn't work, that the system is cruel, that the system is uncaring, and the system is not effective in helping ordinary people live fulfilling lives. In fact, they want you to be plugged into society until they burn you out, and then they pull you out, and then they plug you in somewhere else. Fast forward 65 years and you find yourself inside of the pine box with never really having lived a single day in your life. And I'm not talking about this in some theoretical future. I'm talking about this is right now. This is the story of my entire life. The overall low quality of my life is, in a sense, the culmination of what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks. Sitting at home with no money, waiting to go back to work to see if I even have a job. Because what am I supposed to do with my time off? Just sit here. There's no money for fabulous vacations. There's no money for day trips. There's no money to do anything except pay your bills. At the end of the day, the proletariat does not have the luxury of doing things beyond paying their bills. They have they are going to be in constant survival mode as long as they exist. Today, it's been turned into a tool to keep workers barely afloat, ensuring they don't have the time or resources to fight for better pay or conditions. You don't have time to fight for better pay or conditions. These jobs out here aren't real jobs. Go through Indeed, and I'm willing to bet that 99% of the jobs on Indeed aren't real jobs. They're just a place that you go to waste your time because they're not meeting people's basic needs. If you're living for the lowest quality food and the lowest quality housing, you're not really alive. And you haven't been alive in a long time. And you and I both know that life doesn't pass the sniff test. Life right now smells like dirty gym socks dipped in urine, dipped in alcohol, and probably dipped in a little bit of number two. That's what life smells like, that's what it feels like, and that's where it's going. Because this failed experiment with the minimum wage needs to come to a bitter end as quickly as humanly possible. When something isn't working for the 99% of the population, that system should have been abolished a long time ago, and the experiment should have been canceled right away when you saw what happened. This reminds me a lot of the prisoners experiment with at Stanford University with Zimbardo, where he put the people into one condition, into another condition, and quickly realized that the sadistic guards were going to take a piece out of the alleged prisoner's rear end. They quickly turned into fleece, the same way the corporations have turned into fleece to fleece the lower class. Every day that I get to work and I touch my rear end and it hurts, I know that the system isn't working because it's hurting me every single day. Every day that I come home from work, I'm tired, I'm angry, and better pay isn't coming. Better work conditions aren't coming. The toxic workspace is getting worse every single minute that we have to be there because it's intentional. The experiment to make the proletariat as uncomfortable as possible is working and in full effect. And that experiment isn't an experiment that I want to be a part of. Talking point number two. Corporations profit from keeping workers desperate. Examples like the Applebee's executives show how some leaders openly acknowledge wanting wages to stay low so they can capitalize on people's need to survive. Our desperation is a strong suit for evil corp. The more desperate the proletariat is, the more likely they are to take the jobs that the boomers wish that they would take. Because boomers own all of the resources. Remember, they're the job creators. And when they can't force people, mainly Gen Z in this situation, in order to take those crap opportunities that they call jobs, it makes them bitter. It makes them have to say things like this entitled generation doesn't want to work anymore. And you just like look at what they're asking you to do. They want you to participate in a failed experiment with the minimum wage as the only enticer to come and work, while at the same time having extremely high standards for what you would like for them to do. It's even worse than dangling the carrot in front of people. It's like dangling nothing and telling them that it's there. That's what the workplace is right now, especially for the younger generations. There's nothing there. You're going to chase the carrot and you're living at home. You're going to chase the carrot and there's no home ownership. You're going to chase the carrot and realize that you have no job security. And suddenly, even though you're living at home, you have no job because they expected you to do better. You know who needs to do better? Is Evil Corp and policymakers on what's being dangled in front of poor people. You can't dangle nothing in front of their face and then be upset when they don't move in the general direction that you would like them to move in. This isn't how it works. Life is supposed to be about living a life, about living a life that has some standards. I don't expect to be rich. I don't want to go on fabulous year-long vacations or be off from work, for months at a time. I just want enough so that I don't have to spend a large portion of my day thinking about how I'm supposed to get by with just food and rent. That's not living. And if that's what's being offered as a incentive for life right now, I don't buy it. I question that reality every single day. This can't possibly be real. We can't let them normalize it. This is a huge theme throughout all my videos. Don't let the government and corporations normalize this standard of living because they're trying their hardest, blaming poor people, blaming everyone else except for themselves, because we're never going to be wealthy enough to be capitalists. Let's face it. I don't own anything. I don't own my car. I don't own my home. Hell, I don't even feel like I own my own life. I just wake up every morning in the open air prison. The cell door opens. I go out into corporate America. I come home, the cell closes, and I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life with no hope of escape, because there is no escape from this. It's the system working as it was intended to be. And a system is an experiment until you find a way in which it's going to benefit most of society, not just the 1%. A society that only benefits the 1% is a failed experiment that, again, they're trying to normalize as being, well, this is what you get. You just have to work harder in order to be able to get what the 1% has. Well, at the same time, laughing at you because you're looking for the ladder of upward mobility and it doesn't exist. Whereas in a story that I read this morning, some of the rungs in the ladder to escape poverty have been purposely removed. And so you get to a point and you're like, wait, where's the next step? And the rich people look at you and laugh. It's like, that's not for you, stupid wagey. You know, but keep trying. We love to see you try and fail. It's disgusting. It's a disgusting system that's all broken and janky to the point where you have to look at it and say, this isn't working for me. Because I assure you, it's not working for me, and it hasn't been throughout my entire life. How can I possibly still be dirt poor after trying in a system for over 20 years? It doesn't make any sense. But normalizing this absurdity is what is trying to be done every day. So here goes my final talking point. Necessities like affordable housing, nutritious food, healthcare, and retirement planning have become luxuries. Even basic perks like job security, paid time off are vanishing, creating a society where survival itself feels like a privilege. Survival itself feels like a privilege. Now, you can't tell me that's not something some rich dude who is living in his McMansion while banging his McChick while laughing at the people who make his fortune don't think that every day. Survival itself feels like a privilege. If that doesn't get you hot, I don't know how else I can piss you off anymore. Because if that doesn't make you mad, if survival itself is the intent of the human condition, then we've already lost. Because if they can normalize the way that they treat us, again, the Zimbardo experiment, all you have to do is put one person into one role and another person into another role. You put rich guy into one role who has no care about shoving that baton between your legs, and poor people who can't get out of the way. That's not a system that's working for me. It's not a system that's working for you. And it's not a system that deserves to be allowed to continue. This failed experiment of the minimum wage needs to come to an end as humanly possible. There is no going forward with the minimum wage.